Now, what do we think makes a great villain? Is it how chaotic they are or how evil they are? Or is it something that makes us feel uneasy? Perhaps it's how they speak or something worse, something more evil than how Splatoon balances its weapons. The correct answer is somewhere in the middle. A good antagonist is how they counter the protagonist, and despite how bad the films are, I think three good examples can be found in Michael Bay's Transformers. Now, putting aside the over-sexualization of the films, now everything in Revenge of the Fallen exists. Instead, we can just focus on the villains of the franchise, and we won't be talking much about Megatron in this video, because as the films go on, he becomes more and more sidelined to the other villains, such as the Fallen or Sentinel, and other characters even make fun of him for it.
You were nothing but Sentinel's bitch.
Now, Megatron is still a formidable antagonist and balances out Prime's heroism, and is the only antagonist to actually kill Optimus.
You're so weak.
I mean, Sentinel and Lockdown do beat Prime, but they don't outright kill him. So that's why he needs a video dedicated to himself so he can be dissected properly. Now, the reason why I think I should choose the Fallen, Sentinel, and Lockdown and not Galvatron or Quintessa is because the reason why I won't do Quintessa is because she only has 5 minutes of screen time and Galvatron is just Megatron, so he can be in Megatron's video. Now, a few of you might be asking, why haven't I mentioned Shatter or Dropkick from Bumblebee? And that's because those two are just normal Decepticons, and if I did a video on them, I'd have to cover other normal Decepticons like Ravage, Shockwave or Soundwave. So let's start off this video essay with the Fallen. Now, in the Transformers film, Megatron was treated as pure evil, who Prime was shown to not be able to beat without any help. But in Revenge of the Fallen, we see Megatron's Big Daddy. The Fallen is Megatron's mentor, and is so overpowered that only a Prime can kill him.
Mark is destroyed, and without it, our race will perish. Oh, you have much to learn, my disciple. The cube was merely a vessel. Its power, its knowledge can never be destroyed. It can only transform. How is that possible? It has been absorbed by the human child. The key to saving our race now lies within his mind. Well then, let me strip the very flesh from his body. And you will, my apprentice. In time. For millennia, I have dreamed of my return to that wretched planet where I too was once betrayed by the primes I called my brothers. Only a prime can defeat me, and now only one remains. Optimus.
That's right, not even a cancellation on Twitter can stop him. But luckily, we have Prime, so... Oh god, oh no, not anymore, he's gone.
So weak.
Well, I guess that's it. So now the Fallen is seen in a different light. He is no longer a powerful Decepticon with an Achilles heel, he is now a powerful Decepticon with no Achilles heel, and is now an oncoming storm. Now it's a race to get the key before the Fallen, but he has his fingers in a lot of pies, and he has an army at his disposal. He has managed to turn all the humans against Sam, so the Fallen is like a puppet master, who has finally revealed himself. But his issue is that he never does anything himself, he always gets his servant Megatron to get things done. The only time he steps in is to get the key, and activate the Star Harvester, and we see his full power as he effortlessly lifts up the tanks that are coming to get him, but the Fallen's downside is his ego. You see, when he takes the key, he doesn't take the time to kill Optimus, and instead goes to finish off his plan, and leaves himself open to an attack by a now overpowered Optimus Prime.
Let's roll.
Who he can't even face off against. See what I did there? Face off. Yeah, you get it? Now, the Fallen is one of the original 13, so he is shown to be nearly unstoppable, and he even has in-depth knowledge of the Allspark, and is shown that he is a built-in teleporter and has gravity powers. So, fun fact, whilst I was editing this video, I was looking for the clip where the Fallen teleports, and you can actually see him in the top corner. And I thought, oh, he's not teleporting, but he actually flashes out of existence. I thought, oh, he just looks like he's no, he leaves existence, and then a few scenes later, he just reappears. So he teleports out and then teleports directly next to Optimus, probably because his trajectory was wrong. Now I don't know if that's just to make him look like a god, or if that is just there's an actual reason for why he needs to readjust. Because you can see him here, he teleports in with the lightning, knocks everyone down, and then yeah, because he's here, just teleports, and he's back. I just thought that was really cool. The Fallen is pretty shallow compared to the other two villains, however. He only wants to kill the humans because he sees them as weak or something. It's never actually really said. So let's move on to a villain that has more depth.
For the sake of our planet's survival, a deal had to be made with Megatron.
Sentinel sits in a sort of grey area. He sits as a mingled version of Optimus and Megatron. While Optimus and Megatron take up two ends of the spectrum, with Optimus representing willpower, freedom, and basic courage and heroism, while Megatron represents corruption, greed, and power. Sentinel is also Prime's mentor, and it's said that Optimus was taught everything he knows from Sentinel.
I bring you Cybertron, your home, and still you choose humanity. You were the one who taught me freedom is everyone's right.
So to explain why Sentinel sits in the middle, we need to take a look at Dark of the Moon's opening. In the opening, we follow the Ark as it flies through Cybertron, and we get a look at what the state of Cybertron was before the Autobots and Decepticons fled in search of the Allspark, and we can see that the Autobots are in fact losing hard. Side note, there are comics that were published to act like a prequel for the film that show what the relationship between Sentinel and Optimus and Megatron was at the time, and there are comics for Revenge of the Fallen. The comics add more character to Sentinel and the Fallen, such as showing how the Fallen was imprisoned and how he corrupted Megatron. It also shows us how Sentinel used to fight against Ironhide, and may show us why he chooses to kill him later in the movie, as he knows how strong Ironhide can be, but sadly the comic versions of the characters don't show up in the films, and instead show us a different interpretation of the characters, such as Sentinel being more akin to Nova or Zeta Prime, who both had a form of a superiority complex. Now in the movie we see Optimus Prime's mentor be revived from the dead, only to find out he switched sides before his death, and starts to enact his plan that him and Megatron formed before he crashed in the Ark, and as Prime puts it,
The ship's name was the Ark. I watched it escape Cybertron myself. It was carrying an Autobot technology which would have won us the war. And its captain.
Who is its captain?
The great Sentinel Prime, the technology's inventor. He was commander of the Autobots before me. It's imperative that I find it before the Decepticons learn of its location. Our Autobot spacecraft has the ability to get there, and you must pray it's in time.
Now when Sentinel is revived, the first person he sees is Optimus, and instead of calmly talking to him, well, he instead
Sentinel! It is I, Optimus Prime, here. You are home, Sentinel.
Now this could be put down to the shock of being revived, but it can also be a form of foreshadowing to see Sentinel's true form, as the fact that when both Optimus and Megatron are revived, neither of them attack anything, unless you count. So the fact that Sentinel attacks Prime when he thinks he's alone, but calms down when he sees he's surrounded by Autobots, who say that they are his allies, but since Sentinel is a turncoat, he sees it as a case of him being outnumbered, and because the humans took his cargo, he needs to act as if he's still on their side until he can get a hold of his technology again. In fact, pre-betrayal Sentinel is far different to his post-betrayal self. In fact, he even turns down retaking control of the Autobots, which he sees as being far different. This can show us that Sentinel sees that the Autobots are now far below him, as he openly states that he sees humans as being below him, and that he doesn't think that the Cybertronians should serve the humans, and we see at the end of the film that the Autobots have become weapons used in human missions. The prequel game of the same name shows us how closely the Autobots have become with the humans, and Sentinel sees this as a weakness, and thus refuses to lead a faction he now sees as weak. In fact, as the film goes on, Sentinel reveals how his belief in the Autobots' cause has been distorted by the war, and he now sees that the Autobots couldn't win.
Protect Sentinel, get him locked up inside!
Consider it done. Indeed I am. What you must realize, my Autobot brothers, is we were never going to win the war.
And he makes a deal with Megatron to meet up on the Earth's moon and use its resources to win the war. Now, as I said earlier, he decides to reveal his betrayal by killing Ironhide, as at one point Ironhide was an enemy that Sentinel couldn't beat fairly. And just to show how Sentinel turned evil, the writers even have him shoot Ironhide in the back.
I hereby discharge you from duty.
But unlike the Fallen and Megatron, who are just shown to either hate humans or crave power for the lols, Sentinel seems to take longer to convert to a full villain, however. Megatron sees Sentinel as his greatest triumph, as he sees Sentinel's conversion as a win, and Sentinel responds by cooking Megatron.
Cybertron, together. I have deigned to work with you, that our planet may survive. I will never work for you. And you would be wise to remember the difference.
You see, Sentinel sees his work as doing something to benefit the many instead of the few, does seem remorseful over hurting Optimus, and even tries to warn him to stay away, and doesn't want to fight him, and even asks for his forgiveness.
Sensing transport. Stop! No, 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 Sentinel! Forgive me. Why, Sentinel, why? For Cybertron, for our home. What war destroyed, we can rebuild, but only if we join with the Decepticons. No, it's not the only way. This is our home. We must defend the humans. So lost you are, Optimus. On Cybertron we were gods, and here they call us machines. Let the humans serve us, or perish. You're lucky I didn't kill you. In time, you'll see.
But he isn't willing to let his guilt get in the way of the mission. As Sentinel comes closer and closer to saving Cybertron, he takes full control of the Decepticons and faces Prime, one-on-one, and even overpowers Optimus, which is the first time we see Prime desperate in the films, as in the first two, he never fully calls for a fallback, but Optimus knows Sentinel's strength, and in their first fight orders a retreat, and in the second time seems to ask for help due to him being heavily outnumbered.
Autobots, retreat! I can't hold them! The ships have us pinned! No!
Keep in mind that Optimus just pulled off these two moves.
I'm coming for you!
This shows us, but Sentinel is still able to overpower Optimus and tells him,
Always the bravest of us! But you could never make the hard decisions!
This shows us how Sentinel differs from Optimus, as they both have the same beliefs, but Sentinel is willing to put his beliefs aside to make the hard choices. One notable thing is that Sentinel uses a double-edged sword, because even though his mission is good, and is a great thing for his kind, it means he's damaging his connections with his former friends, and completely severs his connection when he removes Prime's arm, then goes for the kill. And this is big, seeing as throughout the fight, the two have still been trying to convince each other to stand down. Now after Prime kills Megatron for the second time, we get heart to heart with Optimus and Sentinel, and Optimus tells Sentinel that he only betrayed himself, and we see Sentinel's denial and how his previous way of coping by saying it was for the greater good has been ended, and how he now must come to terms with his crime.
Optimus, all I ever wanted was the survival of our race. You must see why I had to betray you. You didn't betray me. You betrayed yourself.
Oh, he can just die.
No, Optimus!
Now, of course, all this I've just said about Sentinel is all up to what your point of view is, as he doesn't appear again to show us more of what his character could be, and the films only go downhill from here, and none of the other characters go through a good growth, or seem to have much depth to any of them, but we can still speculate. Lockdown is a special Cybertronian, as he takes up no side and in fact is a bounty hunter. He is commonly mistaken as a Decepticon, and this is even said by Ratchet in his first appearance in Transformers Animated.
Your magnetic powers won't work on these cables. Carbon fiber, non-metallic.
You Decepticon scum!
Oh, I'm not one of them. Name's Lockdown. I'm what you call a bounty hunter. Decepticons pay real good for info, battle plans, access codes. Your friend should net me some sweet upgrades.
But Lockdown tells Ratchet he works for the side that pays well, but that the relationship is superficial and he has no true allegiance. In fact, in the game Transformers Rise of the Darkspark, Lockdown's main goal is to bring the war to the future so he can get the Decepticons' payments again. In fact, Lockdown's original design has no emblem, which shows us he has no allegiance, and we see other bots have this mark to show they serve no side. But in Age of Extinction, they keep Lockdown's occupation as a bounty hunter, but at the same time allude to the fact that he has taken up allegiance to an unseen force, which is later shown to be Quintessa, or this hand that looks like something from Fire in the Sky. Now, there is one nice note I like, and that is in Lockdown's first appearance, he acts like Ratchet's boogeyman, and it is Ratchet who beats him, but in Lockdown's first appearance in the movie, makes his mark by immediately killing Ratchet.
What's wrong with you humans?
Tell me where he's hiding. Where is Optimus Prime?
Never.
Never is here.
Now, unlike Sentinel, whose prior appearances were reduced to differing bodies such as Zeta Prime's thick arms, or Transformers Animated's chin to rival Joe Swanson's, the point is, every time we see Sentinel, his appearance changes drastically. Either he's a fascist prick with powers over technology, or he's an egotistical college bully with a lance. However, Lockdown is always seen to be a living weapon with an interest in trophies, and he can be slowly seen upgrading himself into a weapon by adding a chainsaw hand and a hook hand. And you can see that his body is made up of other Transformers as a way of upgrading himself, which, fun fact, appears in an episode of Ben 10 aboard Kyber's ship, and Kyber is also a bounty hunter. Lockdown's film counterpart, however, turns both his upgrades and edginess from 8 to 11, because he changes out his Frankenstein body for a real steel Zeus-looking scarred body. Oh, and his head is a gun, so now he's an actual weapon. He does still have his hook hand, however. Unlike Sentinel or the Fallen, Lockdown appears to have a higher battle IQ, as he does not take on the Autobots all at once, but instead separates them and takes them on one-on-one, as we see with the Wreckers. And Ratchet, he also deals a lot of damage to Optimus. We also see how Lockdown treats his victims. He brutalizes them and disables them, as we see him take out Ratchet's leg and leaves him heavily damaged. But he does offer him an olive branch, saying that he won't kill him if he just tells him where Optimus is.
Then I've got to clean it up. There is one way you survive. tell me where he's hiding. Where is Optimus Prime?
Here we learn Lockdown sees himself as above everybody else, as he chastises Ratchet for fighting in the war.
Autobots, Decepticons, like little children, always fighting, making a mess out of the universe. Then I've got to clean it up.
This tells us that Lockdown only cares about one thing, and later we see that the only Cybertronian Lockdown collects is Optimus, and the rest he mutilates by ripping out their spark and saying edgy ass lines. We later learn that Lockdown only cares about his bounty and seems to see the people he works with as nothing but tools, and even rejects their partnership advances and simply says this.
I warn you, Mr. Attinger of Earth. An alliance is a contract, and contracts, like humans, expire. I also have a saying. I don't care.
He knows how small conflicts are and how petty life can be, and we get a good close-up of his scars which show us he's seen some shit. Later we get a conversation between him and Optimus, who he takes out from behind, unlike Sentinel, who fights with Pride and fights with Prime face to face. Lockdown has no issue with being a total third party and shooting Prime once in the back and another shot to the front, which ends up taking Prime out of the fight. Lockdown also tells Prime that they all work for someone and that he was built to do what he was told. We also learn that Lockdown works for the Transformers God, who wants all the remaining knights brought back so they can hit the universal redo button, and Lockdown even says that he's collected them all and puts them in his trophy case. In fact, the in-universe explanation as to why Lockdown has Grimlock and the Dinobots in a cage is that he took over their ship and used their own weapons against them. He does this with the Autobots by turning the humans against them and transforming Grimlock's ship into something out of fire in the sky. In fact, Lockdown actually wins, and as he is leaving, a now free Optimus Prime steals a section of his ship, which Lockdown calls his trophy case. And this shows us some of the cracks that Lockdown has. You see, up until this point, all of Lockdown's strategic and brutal kills have all been business, but now it's personal, as we see his annoyance and not his usual smugness. Earlier in the film, we see him chastise and laugh at the Autobots, and their ideas of good and evil and how they think they were born. But now he actively takes pleasure in killing the Autobots, and plays with Cade before killing him, which, as any Halo player will tell you, doesn't go well, and it leaves him open to an attack by Optimus. Now, one thing I like is that Lockdown was so brutal against the Autobots in how he broke down their wills. He even had them leaving Earth and caused Optimus to kill a human, which is something he swore never to do. He also uses Prime's rage and strength against him by separating him from the rest of his crew and pulls off some ninjutsu shit, which could be seen as a nod to the fact that he was trained as a cyber ninja in Transformers Animated. He even makes Prime watch as he lets Attinger nearly kill Cade, and Lockdown only begins to lose when Bumblebee doesn't listen to Optimus's orders and unites with the Prime and humans to unite against him. But Lockdown is still winning. But once Cade steps in, Lockdown allows his anger with Cade to draw his attention, leading him up to an attack by Prime. So now we have 3 dead villains, so the question is, who is the best out of the 3 of them? The Fallen comes in here dead last. He is pretty shallow and just hates everyone because why not? The real battle here is between Sentinel and Lockdown. While Sentinel feels like he's torn between his feelings and obligations, while Lockdown feels focused and cold, I'm going to have to go with Lockdown on this. Meaning, in my tier list, he's above Sentinel in the villain tier list. I do think they're both as good as each other, but Lockdown has a kick-ass theme, and that has to count for something. So with this pointless discussion out of the way, till next time.